Welcome to our New York Giants Preservation Society meeting for today, February 28th, 2023, with the wonderful Jaime Rupert. Just so you all know, there are no members present. This is a version 2 of a meeting we did on October 19th of 2020. Jaime was, in fact, our second speaker. And the reason we have to do it over is because that meeting took place on Google Meets. And I was lucky enough just to have her on the screen with other members, let alone think about how to record it. So Jaime has been super gracious enough to take time out of her busy day to come speak to us again on the same topics that we had discussed. And Jaime is, if you don't know, is Giant royalty. Her great grandfather and her grandfather were the Stonehams, the former owners of the team, both in New York and in San Francisco. Jaime, first of all, thank you so much for joining me today. The only difference in this video is we have no New York Giant Preservation Society members, thus they will not be asking you their difficult questions that they usually ask. But thanks again so much for joining us. Big 7 o'clock your time, 10 o'clock my time.
Good morning.
Good morning. You're quite the Renaissance woman. Why don't you tell us a little bit before we talk about your relationship with the Giants, about what you do? I know you're an author, world traveler, save rhinoceroses, do everything. Why don't you give a brief synopsis of what you do and what's going on?
You are kind. And first and foremost, thank you to you and the team for preserving the New York Giants. I think it's an extraordinary time in our history and a meaningful gathering place, the Polo Grounds, for everybody and the subsequent San Francisco Giants. So from my heart and my soul, thank you to you and the team. I was very fortunate in growing up in a family that owned a baseball team, but it was back in the day when it truly was a family business. It was the only business that my grandfather had. We literally slept, drank, and ate baseball 365 days a year. There were no vacations. It was always about the team because the team was our family. Obviously heartbroken and devastated when we had to sell the team. I went on to have a career in marketing and public relations. In '92, I was fortunate enough to be part of the team that helped keep the Giants in San Francisco with Larry Baer and Peter McGowan and Walter Shorenstein. So that was a hard fight, but I can't tell you when Larry called me and told me that the team was staying in San Francisco because of all of our efforts. That was a moment where he went, okay, the world is right again. So I bleed orange and black, but I am a businesswoman. I also have recently discovered the plight of the rhino. So I spend a lot of time in South Africa rescuing rhinos. And I am the head of marketing for a technology company out of Boston that's bringing that hospital into the home. So it's an interesting life, but I'm always a baseball girl first.
And you're always on the go.
Yes, I am.
Thanks for that brief summary of what you've done other than the Giants. Now, your baseball family ran the Giants for 57 years, from 1919 to 1976, starting with your great-grandfather, Charles Stoneham. I know, I don't believe he was alive when you were
correct
around. So did grandfather or anybody in your family discuss his life at all?
You know, I will tell you, in my grandfather's office in Candlestick, there was a painting, a portrait of his dad, who he called Pops, but we all called CA for Charles Abraham. So every time you would be in his office, or any time Pop would look up from his desk, there was the portrait of his dad watching over him. And so the Stonehams are a very quiet family. You wouldn't know all of the things that CA did that were for the good of baseball and also the interesting development of New York in the 20s. He was a bit of a bon vivant, but he began his life from out of nowhere, and he ended up becoming part of he owned a stock brokerage. So it was in the very beginning of Wall Street. And a very funny story when you just never know how life goes. So the story is true. There is a rumor out there that the Giants, the New York Giants, were bought by CA for his son Horace for his 16th birthday. That is true.
That's some
and I have,
presents.
yeah, what a present. But what a time to be in the world and to have been. Rob Garrett, who's a fabulous author, has written a book on CA, my great grandfather. And one of the correlations he shows is how he fit into that jazz age time. And so the extraordinary wealth that he had from the brokerage allowed him to do a lot of things. So one of the things that Rob explores, spoiler alert, is a relation to the character Gatsby, the Roaring Twenties, and how Charles Abraham Stoneham really was a figure of that.
And
Go
you
ahead.
mentioned that the family was private. So Rob Garrett, one of our members, a terrific author, just finished this book, Jazz Age Giant, all about your great grandfather. He will be speaking to our group at the end of March. How excited are you to have this book released? And tell me about it.
Crazy excited. I have to tell you, Rob, we met years ago when he was doing his first book, The Home Team, and I was honored to be able to, along with my family, contribute, what we had in terms of knowledge and pictures and story. And then he said he was really intrigued by CA, and he wanted to do a book just on him. No one's ever done a book just on him. So Rob's passion for academic research is amazing. So he's read every New York Times article from the teens to through 1936 when CA died. His devotion to the life of this man, my great grandfather, is so breathtakingly beautiful. He's uncovered something that a lot of history has missed, and really put CA in terms of not only what he meant to the world, but what he did for baseball. So the New York Giants were the team back in the early 20s. The Yankees weren't yet there. And one of the things that's quite fun, there's always fun facts along the way. It was because, the Yankees and the Giants shared the Polo Grounds in the beginning. And CA was, maybe I'm not going to let you sign a new lease for the Polo Grounds. So the Yankees went and built Yankee Stadium. No one ever correlates that because of the Giants, Yankee Stadium was built. It's just forgotten in time. But you look at those two iconic buildings, the former Polo Grounds and the old Yankee Stadium, those were a result of the Stoneham years. So I think the iconic parts of baseball in New York are not just the Yankees, but again, the Giants were huge in the early 20s. CA had one of the best runs of all when he got the team. There were World Series, there were championships, very exciting time.
Knowing Rob and after reading Home Team, this book should be fabulous. So we're all looking forward to the book coming out. When did he turn over the team to Horace Stoneham, your grandfather?
So the interesting part of this is so Horace didn't do well in school. He was was a party guy, and he was dropped out of Fordham. And his dad sent him to work in one of the copper mines in California, called a place called Copperopolis, California. And Horace spent a year in Copperopolis learning what it means to work in the mine. And his dad really tried to straighten him up. Horace came back to New York and worked for the team, was devoted to the team. So he worked in the ticket sales. He worked on travel. He worked in the stadium. He understood the baseball operation. So as much as it was a phenomenal present in 1919 when he was 16, he learned the game from the legends of baseball. If you go back to and you look at those early pictures when he's with he's with Babe Ruth. I've got things from Ty Cobb. You look at the legends that he learned the game from. He brought all of that to his ownership. So his dad died in 1936, and then Horace took over. He was at 34. He was the youngest owner of a baseball team, and the sole owner. So that's the other part of it. There wasn't a conglomerate of people that owned the Giants. It was his team. He was kind enough to give shares of the team to his half sister, Mary Oftahar, and Mary, her son ended up my grandfather's nephew was Chub Feeney, who ended up becoming the president of the National League. And then Chub's daughter being Katie, one of the most beloved women in baseball. They're all part of Horace's leadership and legacy. So it stretches far and wide.
She just passed away a few years ago, correct?
And she was amazing.
Okay, so Horace takes over the Giants. 1951, famous shot heard around the world. 1954, World Series champions. Then in 1957, now I'm sure you've had discussions with him when he was alive. What prompted the move to San Francisco? And from all accounts that I've read, you know, he really didn't want to go. He's kind of had to go.
I think that there's so Horace was always a visionary for baseball, and again, the subtlety and the largeness of what he did is lost because he didn't go and brag about it. He just set to work to build his baseball team, and I think one of the greatest attributes that he had was he was literally colorblind, and he was figuratively colorblind. All Pop wanted to do was to build a great baseball team. And because the team was his family, he went and looked for the best all around the world. So when you look at, again, signing Willie Mays, you look at Monty Irvin, you look at all the players from Latin America, which he opened. You look at the influence of Japanese baseball and Japanese players in baseball. Horace looked far and wide, and I will tell you, there was never a time when I ever heard anybody say anything other than that's a great ball player. So he was, if you look at the diversity of his leadership throughout time, his front office was diverse. He had interpreters for players. He made sure his team was well taken care of because they were his family. So that love of his for his team broke his heart when he had to move to San Francisco. And it may seem callous to people, but unfortunately, it was the state of the economics. It was the only business he had was baseball. And as you know, attendance started to dwindle. He also saw that, again, it's news, not news to us, but you know, the car was really becoming a big deal. And being able to have parking and going to a place that actually he had been to back. So if you go back in time now, do a little time travel, when he was in Copperopolis in the early 20s, he was in San Francisco and he fell in love with the West. You would have, when you were in that house in Arizona, you would have thought Pop was a cowboy. He always wore a cowboy hat. He had Western books. You would never know he owned a baseball team. You would think he was a cowboy. So that love of the West really kept him looking westward. So I did ask him, so whose decision was it to move west? And it was his. And he was a good friend of Walter O'Malley. Don't think they were just rivals, but they were friends, pioneering a way forward. And he told me that Walter had said to him, well, Horace, since it was your idea, which city do you want? And Horace said, well, I'm taking San Francisco because I don't want to be with all those crazy people in LA. And such is the stuff of legend, but it was his impetus that kept baseball moving west. And then you look at, again, all of the things that happened from that decision for baseball. It goes back to him.
Now, you know, he'd be considered a villain to many New York Giant fans. I am a little surprised that in his stay in San Francisco from 58 to 76, look, I know he had to eventually move out of San Francisco. He sold the team and the team was threatening to leave San Francisco. But I'm surprised he's not given more acclaim for bringing baseball to San Francisco. I mean, I don't see anything at the park, Oracle Park, honoring him at all. And it's a little surprising because they really were the first team to move out west.
You know, they were, and it is, Yeah, there are no streets named after Horace. There is nothing. But I will say that when you look around the park, all the moments that they capture, the Giants capture and relive and revere, those are all from Horace's ownership era. So as much as his picture may not be up and his name well known, my goodness, look at his teams, look at the players. They're beloved. And because they're beloved, I believe he's beloved, even though he's forgotten.
You also said a great thing that I didn't realize was that, he sold the team to Bob Laurie, and many people are upset that he thought about leaving San Francisco. Yet you fought to keep them in San Francisco many years later. So I think that's another thing about being full circle in the Stoneham family, even though your last name is Rupert. You're
Right, right. Again, you're always, like I said, to grown up. I was funny. When I was young and we were in San Francisco, my dad had been in the Air Force, and he came to work for my grandfather in 1966. And we would be at home in our living room, and my grandfather would have his friends over every Sunday during the season when the team was away and they weren't traveling with the team. And it would be Tom Sheehan, Carl Hubble, Hank Sauer, Herman Franks. And they would sit and they would talk about baseball games, and they would relive every minute of a game together.
That's
And what was so stunning to me, and I will never forget this about every pitcher I have had the fortune to know and meet in baseball, they can tell you the pitch count, they can tell you the inning, they can tell you it was a changeup, they can go through the game pitch by pitch. So I got to relive games that were long gone through the eyes of the men who played the game. So growing up with that kind of reverence for the game, that is how Pop raised all of us. We were never allowed on the field. You were never in player parking. You were respectful of the team that was on the field and the field on which they played.
Tell me a couple more questions regarding yourself. What was your experience as a youngster? Because what are you, 30? Going to many a game at Candlestick Park. You got to meet the players, or how was that experience?
Yeah, again, being the children of the grandchildren of the owner, none of us, like I said, were allowed on the field. We would go early to the game, and we go up to Pop's office about an hour and a half before the game. If there was any business, last minute business that a player needed or something that was happening, they would just come in his office. So we would see them there. We in spring training, we got to spend a lot of time with them. So Willie Mays gave my brother a mitt. I mean, it was just family, but it was a respectful family of everybody's job to do. After the games, so we would go to all the games. At Candlestick, it was cold. Man, I'm probably one of the only people that really loved Candlestick because I grew up there in that cold wind. And you just had to love it for what it was. It was horrible towards the end when there was nobody in the stands, and there were 800 of us, and it was quite sad. But nobody wanted the Giants in baseball at that point. So it wasn't that Pop didn't try. It was just it had kind of run out of steam for his time. And fortunately, Bob Lurie had been a very close friend, and he was on the board of the team, and Bob stepped in and bought the team. So Bob is beloved and heroic, and he always invited Pop to, join him and be a part of the next session. But it was just too hard for Pop. It was too hard.
One more question for you before we turn back to your grandfather. I know you were honored by the Giants in their World Series parades. How'd that make you feel?
Oh, okay, there is nothing like a World Series parade, and I will.
Well, we would have never known that until 2010.
Listen, it was the honoring of the tradition of the Giants and the family. So I again, so grateful to them for honoring the contribution of the Stonehams. I will tell you, I now understand rooting for a team in a whole new way. So our bus was in front of Buster.
Let me just interrupt you. So did they contact you and say, "Hey, we want you to be a part of this"? How did they find out?
They did. They absolutely did. They said this is, this is the whole franchise. So honoring from the beginning in San Francisco, which was our family, to the other owners of the team. So it was a family, absolutely a grand and generous family moment for the whole Giants family. But really, when you have 1 million people, so Buster Posey's there, and you have 1 million people, and you can hear everybody's voice. It isn't like it's a roar. You actually hear all the voices, and you realize that everybody that rooted during all those games, okay, I'm not going to move because he's going to get a hit if I stay in this position, or the cheer that happened, or the singing. You feel every moment of those games as you go through that parade, and the fans are the heart and soul of a team. And when you can celebrate in that kind of joy, you realize every voice matters, every fan matters, and yes, every time you yell something fabulous to your player, you are part of the win, and you feel that in the parade.
That's great. That's fabulous. I wish I could have attended, but in my own way, I had my own parade here because I waited 41 long years, and it's just unbelievable. Let's go back to your grandfather. Um, this book came out a few years ago, an award-winning Sabre book by Steve Treader, really talking about your grandfather. How did this feel when you read it? How much did you contribute? It's another fabulous book. So your whole family now will be represented with your grandfather and your great-grandfather. But
Yes,
40
and
years a giant, Horace Stoneham.
yeah, and Steve, again, another phenomenal author who took time out of his life to explore Horace's life. So that is the first full biography on Horace. If you can imagine the plethora of biographies on the Dodgers and Walter O'Malley and other owners throughout baseball, that was his first biography. So it was, again, so well researched, so well documented. And again, the things and the achievements of Horace that Horace didn't stand up and go, okay, I did this and I did that, here's that. But you can see that his track record of bringing baseball forward culturally in America at a very difficult time for our country was unheralded. So I'm glad Steve also took the time to really understand all the things that Horace did for the betterment of baseball.
I assume you were a big part of it because I read it, and he must spend hours with you talking about your grandfather.
He did, and again, both he and Rob took time to go look through our pictures and live the stories. And again, the Christmas photos with Tom and Dorothy Sheehan, right? It's just the intimacy that they wrote about and they got to know Pop and CA through us is reflected in their work. They're just not. They came across as human beings, and with all of their strengths and their weaknesses.
Great. Now listen, I'm going to show a film in a minute. Your quest has been to get your grandfather inducted into the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. I know there'll be a new election in a few years. Hopefully, he'll be on the ballot for your sake. But a lot of people feel that he is on Hall of Fame worthy. Reason being, he moved the team from New York, had Candlestick Park built, which, considered to be one of the worst stadiums ever. He drank a lot, showed nepotism, cronyism, made bad trades, was going to move the team out of San Francisco. This film shows another side of him, and you have a website up. Talk to me about the website before I show the website and the film.
Sure. So I've been trying to do this since the early 2000s and getting into the Hall of Fame as anybody on the pursuit of trying to do that. It's really, really hard. It's not unlike a political campaign where it is a lot of politics rather than really sometimes just the merits of somebody's achievements. So what I tried to do is, yes, all those things are part of the story that you said, Gary. But Walter O'Malley also moved the Dodgers out of New York, but he's in the Hall of Fame. So again, the equal playing ground, I don't think it is. But if you really look, again, take away all the veneer and look at here are the ways Horace impacted baseball for the betterment of the player and the game and our society. And that's what I tried to really focus on are the things that if you put all the pieces together, it's hard to say, no, this man doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. If you only look at one, yeah, you can, but look at them together. And I think also when you hear from Willie Mays, and again, the GOAT, and the relationship he and my grandfather had was incredibly meaningful. And I don't think you can doubt when Willie Mays says Horace Stoneham belongs in the Hall of Fame. You need to take Willie's word for it, not mine.
I've seen it many times. It's a quick 3.5 minute film, fabulous. It says everything you said about diversity, and also about starting spring training in Arizona, which also brought other teams out west. I'm gonna show the film, and then after that, there's another segment about 3 minutes where Hall of Fame Giants Mays, Gaylord Perry, Cepeda, and McCovey also talk about Horace's future candidacy. So I'm going to share the screen. Okay. And let's see what happens. I can get this working. Here we go. All right. I think that's it. Very well done, Jamie. Let me try to move this. There we go. All right. So also on this Horace for the Hall, I just want to go over these tabs here. Tell us what this is all about.
Yeah, so this is again a write-up of his accomplishments. So that is again just a litany of things that he achieved.
Wonderful. And if we press this, it's going to be a lot longer than this little box
Correct.
here. These are all the, web pages that have information on what you accumulated, correct?
Correct. Just different sources of things about Horace.
And here are testimonials. Bonnie Irvin's daughter, Orlando Cepeda, Felipe Alou, back to it. Okay. First of all, again, it was a great film, and whether you believe him to be a Hall of Famer or not, I mean, I don't really know what Walter O'Malley did other than move the Dodgers out west and built a palatial stadium. Your grandfather seems to have done many things to make the game better. And let's hear about that from some of the Hall of Fame Giants.
Gary, I think you have to share sound.
No. All the guys that I talked to love Mr. Stone. I could sit here and talk about a couple hours about this man.
First of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about a great man, Horace Stoneham.
And when you ask the question, does he belong in the Hall of Fame? If there is any other things that you can get into, I think he would be there too.
Horace Stoneham means a lot to me. It's bad that people don't know what kind of person he was.
You may not know all the details. You came later. With me, he was like a father.
There were certain guys like myself and Mays that he took to like sons. We thought of him as our father.
We go way back. 1951 to 1972, I was playing with a ball club, and Mr. Stoneham was part of all that situation.
Horace was the first foreigner baseball signed player for Puerto Rico. He signed me in 1955. He gave me the opportunity to come to America. I had a couple of pretty good games for him. Had a no-hitter for him. He cared about his ball.
All you had to do is go to him. He would take care of whatever you needed. Whatever he wanted to do, they did it. It started with Bill Wrigley, Al Todd, Leo DeRocha, Jaime Rupert. If you remember any of those guys, you can go way back and you can see how they were so involved in baseball. And Mr. Stone, they would do anything for him.
We saw a lot of him in spring training. That's when he really mingled with the players in spring training.
So we would go down there 2 weeks every year to do the spring training. And Mr. Stone would come right with us. He did so much for me when I was a young man in Fairfield. I could never repay him for what he did for me and my family. He was a very fine man to me.
I love Horace Stoneham, and he's a great baseball man.
The owner of the Giants and I played Mr. Stone mentioned the whole.
Might be in the Hall of Fame, so we can be there together.
I have listened to a lot of owners, and they are already in there. I feel that Mr. Stone is right there with them, but Mr. Stone should be right side of him.
I thought he was already in the Hall of Fame, so I'm really surprised that he's not. He's one owner that should be.
Right side of Marichal,
Spade and McCovey and Remade. Gale. Horace Stoneham should be in the Hall of Fame.
Fascinating film, Jamie. It really was to see 4 Hall of Fame Giants, 4 of them having statues talking about your grandfather that way. Must make you feel so proud.
No, it does, and it's obviously much more poignant, since Gaylord's passed and Willie McCovey, and it's just it's a family, and those are his family members who have achieved the Hall of Fame. Again, I leave it to them to make the determination that he should be in. The people that know him the best, and they all agree he deserves to be there.
Wonderful. Listen, I cannot thank you enough for giving us your time. Any final thoughts, comments?
Well, yes. Again, I love you guys, but again, the Giants family goes back in time. It goes forward in time, and we all are a family. And the reason why we can say that with such conviction is because it started as a family with the Stoneham family. So anytime you say Giants family, that's the Stonehams too. So I'm so glad we're all family, every Giant fan around the world.
Jaime Rupert, thank you again, not only for speaking today, but doing it again today in lieu of when we did it in 2020.
Thank you, Gary.
Great night and be well.
Thank you. See you soon.
Bye-bye, guys.